Welcome to Recombination Nation. Today, I have a rather extraordinary guest. Soryu Forall is an ordained Zen Buddhist monk who trained widely across Asia and then founded his own institution in the wilds of Vermont. His Monastic Academy for the Preservation of Life on Earth brings a spiritual dimension to the challenge of existential risks facing modern society. In particular, he provides training to the leaders of the AI tech movement, balancing that explosion of artificial intelligence with his own dose of authentic wisdom. So that's my kind of boiled down summary of what I've managed to gather reading about you. Do you want to give us a little bit of an overview from your own perspective about how this journey played out for you to lead you to this point?
Yes, when I was a child, I was very worried about existential risks. This was the main concern, even when I was very young, that I spent my time contemplating, and I was very worried about it. And so I asked myself and others, what do you do? How do you stop us from killing everyone, including us? And that desperation eventually led me to Buddhism and to training in monasteries because I concluded, first of all, that the monastery is the best way to make the lifestyle changes needed in order to protect, preserve, care for all living things, but also that I myself needed to clarify my own mind, that was my first responsibility. And out of that came this institution and this attempt to add our little grain of sand to this great mountain that is Buddhist wisdom.
Mm.
So we are facing the existential risks of this moment as a way to clarify our minds, to realize enlightenment.
Excellent, excellent. So let's pick up on the thread of monasteries, because I've read a lot about Western monasteries, the way the institution was founded and perfected and spread, and eventually destroyed in the westernmost part of the Protestant part of the system. It's been utterly
Yeah.
fascinating to me. I'm less familiar with the history of monasteries in the East. So can you tell me a bit about how they have functioned through history?
Yes, the early history of monasteries isn't clear. It is possible that the Buddha himself invented this type of institution, which is really quite surprising, especially because in the history as Buddhism has passed it down, the Buddha seems to have gone to spiritual communities where he trained prior to his enlightenment, when he was still, as we put it, just an unenlightened bodhisattva, before his complete awakening and realization of Buddhahood. It is said that he trained in a few different communities. But as we look into the history of it, the type of community that he formed with a clear code of discipline, with clear curricula regarding learning the doctrine and progressing through various stages of realization, and the governance structures, all of this may have been the beginning of what we now call a monastery. It's possible then that that structure spread through Eurasia, possibly even all the way to Europe, to the Mediterranean, and then maybe even, I think that there's a very strong case to be made that monasteries are also the foundation of what we now think of as the university, that type of educational institution, which is in fact the modern monastery. That serves the purpose in our society that monasteries have served in most societies in the past. So when I use the word monastery here, I want to be clear. I mean both the Buddhist form in particular, but oftentimes I use it to mean spiritual communities in general. The monastic form simply means, a lot of the time when I use it, that you're emphasizing spiritual practice. There's a community that is willing to adjust everything in order to most completely realize spiritual aims. In terms of the Buddhist monasteries, though, through Eurasia, these monasteries served a vast variety of functions. When I was living in Ladakh, I was in a monastery in Hemis, in the far north of India. That monastery is the orphanage. It is a school. It is a place where people who are having a hard time at home, for whatever reason, come for shelter. It is the movie theater, because the monks do all these performances, dancing, they put on costumes, they become deities and represent that mind to the community. It's the matchmaking institution, because in the courtyard, it's where the young people get to know each other and have the opportunity to court each other in the courtyard. It's the concert hall, because sometimes the lay people will come and sing Buddhist songs. It serves every function. Monasteries have been battered women's shelters. One of the main ways that ordination for women has been used in order to serve society is to give women a way out of circumstances that aren't working for them. And the point that I want to emphasize the most, because it's so essential, is that when we consider the modern world, I'd suggest that there are four main institutions that have come to define what we think of as modern times. As I already said, there's the university. But there are three more. There is the industrial firm. There is the corporate bank. And then there is, of course, the nation state. So setting aside the nation state, let's put that aside for now. Monasteries in India and China, the two most advanced, most populous, most economically powerful cultures in the world for much of the past 2,000 years. In both places, the Buddhist monastery served the purpose of three of these four institutions. They were the university, of course, as I've mentioned, and we can go into that if you'd like. They were also corporate banks, meaning that they specialized in lending. They specialized in lending at interest. They invented many technologies, from contracts to interest, compound interest. Their endowments, which were called the eternal treasury, were ways of lending to farmers, for example, in need. Especially in China, an enormous amount. And the monastery that I trained at in China is still like this. An enormous amount of industrial activity is happening there, not just farming. The one I was at was the specific temple I was at was a major tea plantation and tea exporter. The reason I bring all this up, the reason it's so important, is that monasteries in these two powerhouses of cultures did not destroy life on earth. Mm-hmm. You can't say they didn't have time. The difference is not that we now suddenly have the capacity to turn these types of institutions into an omnicidal force on the planet. It's that these monasteries had a clear, compassionate ideology. That ideology included wisdom, which is to say, the monasteries taught monks how to escape from all ideology. So the monastery had a compassionate ideology, and because it allowed people to escape from every view, there was wisdom there as well. Because of that, these firms, as you could call them, these banks, as you could call them, never got caught in the profit motive.
Mm-hmm.
For that reason, even though they were of great service to society, they didn't do the thing that we've seen happen over the past 200 or 300 years, namely the vast destruction of life on Earth.
Linking back, does that suggest that the dissolution of the monasteries in Protestant Europe may have opened the door for the Industrial Revolution, like that
Sure.
transformation in the core dynamic driving society?
Of course.
Interesting. Interesting. Um,
I think
yeah.
you have to credit Catholicism and other forms of Christianity as well for slowing the destruction of life by hundreds of years.
Mhm.
If it weren't for the now we call it the Dark Ages, right? This time of beautiful art and human connection, and a vast decrease in violence, especially by professional armies. This time that we call the Dark Ages, this was, if it weren't for that time, then right now we wouldn't get to see elephants, whales, because we'd be so much further along in the destruction of life.
Mhm.
So I think that we have to have enormous gratitude. Now, of course, through history, people are always mad at clergy, and there are good reasons for that. But I'm not saying that monasteries are perfect. Not at all. I've lived in monasteries for the vast majority of my adult life, and in fact, the majority of my life. I know better than anyone, except for people who've lived in them longer than I have, all of the foibles, mistakes, and sometimes egregious errors that monastics make. Okay, sure. I'm not claiming that when you enter a monastery, you leave samsara. Samsara meaning this cycle of suffering that we go through. I'm not saying that going to a monastery is nirvana. Not at all. Monasteries are a conditional fabrication.
Mm.
The Buddha himself is clear on this. The point I'm making is that if everyone lived the way people have lived in spiritual communities around the world for thousands of years, if everybody lived in that way, valuing spiritual bliss over sensual bliss, sensual pleasures, valuing wisdom, which is to say, letting go of our perspective over clinging to our perspective. If everyone had those values and lived in that way, then not one of the top 10 problems on the planet right now would exist.
Mhm. Mhm. Well, that leads into my next question. So we're currently going through a cost of living crisis in the West, particularly among young people, and a connection crisis. And myself and other people that I talk to wonder if something like a monastic model could be adapted and scaled for people in those situations.
I think this is not only of great benefit to such people, because many people here are coming out of that situation. I would say further that monasteries have always been and must now be the place where new perspectives, new ways of looking at the world, new ways of understanding reality, new ways of determining how we should live. Monasteries are the place where that has to be developed.
Mm,
And there's nothing we need more, nothing we need more than this development of ways of looking.
mm,
If I had to say the biggest problem in the world, it is that we are completely stuck. We're stuck more than we have ever been in a certain way of looking at the world. That is what the crisis on the planet is right now. We're lost, stuck, trapped in a harmful way of looking at the world, which is also inaccurate. It's not true. It's false.
Mm.
So it's false and harmful. How do we get out of it? We need people to look at the world in new ways. So it's of the utmost importance that people create these spiritual communities. That, of course, is an excellent way to welcome people in who are going through their personal crises. It's also the way to deal with the global crisis.
Mm. On that idea of stuck mindset, like the word monastery means it refers to solitude, to isolation, to separateness. But paradoxically, monasteries allow people to do that in a group, a small group of people, separate themselves from the world, develop a perspective either in on their own or in a small collective, and then that can feed back into the rest of the world to give it a different idea. Am I kind of getting that correctly?
Well, of course, the term monastery in English has a certain etymology and historical usage,
Mm.
which I would not say is entirely relevant worldwide. But to the degree that it is relevant, the the most important part of it is that we separate ourselves from the mainstream way of looking at things. So when we say solitude, yes, solitude, okay, fine. Really, if you look at it, monasteries are about the least characterized by solitude of any institution, especially nowadays. When people come here, for example, they finally are in a group of people who know them very quickly. Within a few days, everybody knows you. They know your propensities, they know your patterns, they know your fears, they know your desires. All that's known. You're completely seen. You're not alone. But you are, in a way, alone when it comes to separating from the mainstream view of the world.
Mm.
You're separated from that. And in Buddhism, we emphasize this enormously, that you separate yourself from, you gain distance from the ordinary, mistaken way that the world looks at things.
Mm. Mm.
However, when you do that, you then have the opportunity, which we take very seriously, to impact the world. And monasteries have always done this. Monasteries are the place where you develop a new way of seeing, and then you give that back to the world, and you guide a society. So just to be clear on this, the mainstream society as we see it now, over the past few hundred years, has been very successful at eliminating all alternatives. We've never seen anything like this in history,
Mm.
not at this scale and not at this speed. What's happened over the course of history, you and I are on two continents where we ought not have this color skin or speak this language. But here we are.
Mm.
That didn't happen in a state of harmony. There was enormous conflict and cruelty in that process. We, as monastic institutions, we need to look at that, ask what happened, and find a new way forward. Find something else. The essential component of that is to see that as this culture has spread, it, upon meeting other cultures, has done one of two things. It tries one thing, and if that doesn't work, it does the other. It either converts others to this way of seeing, or it kills them. Now, monasteries have the capacity to exist right within this culture, the same as in India, China and elsewhere. You live right within the dominant culture, but separate from it, and able to therefore feed back into it and guide it to some degree in a better direction. Mm. And so the special thing about a monastery is that you exist and may even be born within the dominant culture, this dominant religion, but you're not part of it. And for that reason, you can be a source of enormous renewal.
Mm-hmm. This reminds me a lot of how we have we have industrial monocultures of crops, where they're all pretty much identical, but we've made a conscious effort to preserve crop diversity in special institutions. And occasionally, when there's a disaster on the big scale, we go looking to those specialized institutions, and there might be some answer hiding in amongst all of that complexity.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's what monasteries do. It's actually interesting. We had a recent visitor who really questioned, who said, I talked to everyone here and it seems as if you all speak the same language. You're all looking at things in the same way. And I pointed out, actually, it's the opposite. If you go into the grocery store, you go onto some forum on the internet, you go to a company or a university, in those places, everybody's speaking the same language, everybody's looking at things the same way. I would suggest that there's more diversity in our little community of a few dozen people in terms of view than in an entire university or an entire company. Because at those institutions, there's a clear and dominating set of values. Here, everybody's different. There's both more individuality and more communal connection. And this is normal. We aren't a special monastery in that way. This is common. And not only in monasteries, other spiritual communities as well. Why? Well, because we're not ultimately held together by beliefs. That's why. We're held together by a practice.
Are there any other aspects of a monastery that differentiates it from other kinds of intentional communities? Like there's, in the last couple of centuries, there's been a lot of experiments at building various kinds of intentional communities with varying levels of success. But what differentiates a monastery in your perspective?
Well, the main difference is that a monastery is an unintentional community.
I like that answer.
So just to be clear, as a teacher, I don't choose my students. I don't intend for my students to be this way or that. I don't intend for them to have this goal or that. I just love them. I care about whoever comes. When you enter a monastery, I know in my experience, I was in Japan, and after a year or so, I realized I was looking around at everybody and realized if it was up to me, I wouldn't be spending time with any of you. None of you are the kind of people who I would choose to spend time with. Not one. Now, that wasn't always true. It was true at that moment. There were 3 people who I became very close to, good friends with over the years in Japan. And I'm still friends with all 3 of them. But at that moment, I was looking around and realizing none of you are like me. None of you see things the way I see them. I don't really appreciate your approach to your lives. I don't even know why you're here. And I realized then it's exactly because of that I'm so close to everyone. That's the reason I'm so close. That's the reason for our friendship. Because as long as we try to make a community of the people who we want to spend time with, that community will fail. And that's good, actually, that community fails. When I go around to intentional communities and talk to them about what they're doing, and people do invite me and ask for help, This is one of the first things that I point out. I say, do not just try to make a group of friends.
Interesting. Very interesting. What are the other challenges that you've found adapting monastic culture to the Western mindset? Is there a kind of mismatch there that needs some consideration to bridge?
Well, that's a good question. In a way, there's something different, but in a way, it's just the same as what's always happened. So, what's different is that we are developing this Buddhist community in the context of a dominant religion that Buddhism has never faced before. And to be honest, over the past 100 years or so, 200 years, I'd suggest that Buddhism has had very little success in dealing with this particular dominant religion. And this dominant religion, of course, is humanism. Typically, we would call it secular humanism. And it's the founding religion of, for example, the United States. I'd suggest that one of the reasons the United States is an important institution is that we formally founded this nation upon the values of secular humanism. Our documentation in our Declaration of Independence, our Constitution, clearly set out that belief structure, which is very different from monotheism, different from polytheism, different from animism, different from the vast majority of traditions that have underpinned cultures in the past. And so we are a firmly humanist society. And many people think that the US, I'm talking about the US because I'm from the US. Many people, and I'm living here now and we're dealing with this culture. Many people think of the US as a, quote, secular, meaning non-religious society. And when people think the US is religious, what they typically mean is, well, there are a lot of conservative Christians around. But I'd suggest that while the Christians are an essential foundation for secular humanism doesn't really make any sense without Christianity, or at least without some kind of monotheism. So the humanists need the Christians in order to make sense of their lives. But it's the humanism that's using the Christianity that's actually running our society. Mm-hmm. And the bad news is that this religion has been extremely harmful. It's caused the most destruction of life in all of history. And beyond that, it's gotten people deeply trapped in a very specific kind of identity. People identify as how I feel, my story about my life. Being attached to self-referential thoughts and emotions is normal for people in a secular humanist society, and it is extremely unusual throughout human history. Mm. And I suggest it's extremely harmful. And so the thing that's different is that we need to find a way to work with secular humanists of whatever. Mm-hmm. And I'm happy to go into detail about the types of secular humanists and how we work with them. But what is the same is that Buddhism has always needed to function within a dominant religion, whether that's Brahmanism, whether that's Confucianism, whether it's any other thing, Shintoism in Japan. There's always this dominant view that Buddhism is attempting to be the medicine for. And so that's what we're doing here too. And we're getting just the same kind of pushback as we've always gotten for 2,500 years.
You've reminded me of a story I heard that in ancient Egypt, they didn't have a word for religion because it wasn't a separate thing. And it's almost like religion is the invisible or unexamined bedrock of your society. And is that what makes Buddhism not quite a religion because its whole purpose is to examine itself?
Well, I'd say that uh, religions have the responsibility to do two things, and they do not always do both things. One thing that a religion has the responsibility to do is to provide people with a way of looking at the world. So it's essential to tell people this is how you can look at things. This is how you can look at yourself. This is how you can look at your society. This is how you can look at the universe. Consider it this way. Understand it that way. All religions do that. So secular humanism does that, you know.
Mm.
What are you really? Well, really, in truth, you are a sacred spark somewhere inside of you that is good and wise, and that's your essence. That's a claim that humanism makes. Somehow, somewhere inside of the human is some special thing that is a good thing. And if you could just find it and align with it, then everything would be great. You would be happy. You would do things that benefit society. The whole world would be fixed just through your essential essence.
Mm.
Buddhism doesn't say that we have such an essence. However, the other side is that it says that the world is just material. It's a material world. That's somehow ultimately meaningless, except for the fact that humans give it meaning. This part of the doctrine isn't clear and depends a great deal depending on the type. A religion that we haven't discussed yet, accelerationism, has its own very different way of understanding reality and how you should live in it. Buddhism and other good religions do a second thing. They also ask you to examine those very assertions to the point that you become courageous enough to completely let go of them. Mm. So Buddhism emphasizes this more, I'd suggest, than any other religion. This point around bringing forth skepticism, demanding evidence for these claims, until eventually you see that you can't find a single shred of evidence for any of the claims. Then you become free. Becoming free, you're in a position then to come back and make even better ways of looking at things. So this cycle is extremely important. It's not unique to Buddhism, but in my experience, Buddhism does it the best.
Yes.
And it's the reason I think that Buddhism has so much to offer right now when we're so stuck in a very narrow and false way of looking at things.
That's one thing I definitely wanted to highlight is how Buddhism managed to act as like a parallel operating system on top of multiple like dominant world religions throughout history. That's a really unusual move to pull off.
It's incredible. Yet probably the only example we have, especially if you consider the possibility, and I know that this is rather controversial, but I'm not the only person who suggests it, that Greek skepticism and Chinese Taoism may be forms of Buddhism. It's possible that somehow they all came from the same source. And there are three different manifestations in three different cultures of this basic understanding. And the understanding is very straightforward. Most people have the sense that the way to understand reality is to conceptualize it. And the point is made, well, that doesn't make any sense. Don't understand reality by conceptualizing it. Let go of all of your opinions. That's how you understand reality.
Mm. Was there a brief moment in the early stage of like scientific materialism where it was coexisting with Christianity in the West, but it kind of eventually consumed its parent? I'm just thinking of how much science came out of religious
Of course.
institutions and highly devout people.
Oh yes, of course. This
Mm,
is how it this is how it has been through history and all cultures that I know of.
mm.
Things don't just come out of nowhere, but once they arise, of course, they do, as you say, they tend to, so many of these systems tend to try to consume their source.
Yeah, yeah. The analogy I would have for Buddhism, I'm a biologist, so I'm always looking for like biomimetic explanations. When you only have one copy of a gene, uh, it's very difficult to make changes of it. It keeps getting pushed back to like one optimum local maximum, and it's very difficult to take risks with that. But when you have a gene duplication, now there's another copy, and you can afford to experiment with it in parallel without compromising that original function. And I almost wonder if Buddhism functioned like that. It added this other layer of dealing with all the complexities of society, and it didn't have to like reinvent Hinduism. It operated in parallel.
Yes, and I would suggest that right now, as accelerationism takes over the world, that it is of the utmost importance that other institutions, and I'll speak now on behalf of Buddhism, other institutions, including Buddhism, serve this function because accelerationism, as it stands, cannot fulfill its highest purpose. It's trying to trap everything in terms of its own, as I say, false and harmful worldview. And it, for that very reason, will fail at its own highest purpose.
Mm.
Uh, as you may have gathered, we are extremely worried about the current direction of accelerationist technological growth. It's already showing itself to be the most harmful religion in all of human history. But that doesn't mean that we just want to get rid of it. Not at all. We want to help it to fulfill its own highest purpose. It cannot do that on its own.
Mm.
It will certainly fail. It's already failing. But if you have people who are capable of completely relinquishing those views and coming back to them with wisdom, then it's possible.
Mm.
To put it differently, you brought up genes. As long as we believe that we really are genes, as long as we believe that we truly are patterns of information, it's not possible to fulfill the highest purpose of, say, biology,
Mm.
because it isn't true. We are not just patterns of information. We are not just information processing systems. That's a view. Can you actually escape from that view, escape from that way of conceptualizing reality, directly encounter reality? And then perhaps, if you wish, if you have deep compassion, come back into relationship with people who still have that view and show them a new way forward.
Mm, mm. You'll be pleased to know I interview a lot of biologists who are trying to break the mindset out of, seeing genes as the be all and end all, and that everything's just, reducible to letters in a database.
Mhm.
Now, looking forward, do you have any intuitions about what the 21st century might look like in terms of this religious, cultural, technological upheaval? Like, do you have any fears or maybe hopes about which directions it could go?
Oh, well, of course, I'm very concerned. Uh, if we look at the past few centuries, we just see a continuing exponential increase in the destruction of life on the planet. People often say, if we aren't careful, life may be wiped out. But life is being wiped out.
Mm.
Life on the planet is dying. It's not something that may happen in the future. Disaster has already struck. And I understand that this is heavy material. I don't want to overwhelm listeners. And so before getting into this, if I might, I'd like to take a step back out of this intellectual conversation. If that's all right with
Oh,
you.
yes. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
And bring yourself back to some time. For me, there was a time when I was 12. I was outside in a field. And I have the sense that most of us have had this experience at some point. Bring yourself back to a time when you realized that we're all one. When you realize that there's just one life. Just one life. The sense of separation wasn't present. So I have the sense that most of us have had this experience. Some of us may have had this experience today. Maybe you went outside and you forgot yourself and looking at the trees moving in the wind. Whatever it might be, just try for a moment to bring your attention back to that. And I'd ask us as we do that to bring that experience into this moment. Maybe by following your breath, but not by thinking. Not by thinking about how we're all one, not by thinking about how we're not separate, but as much as possible to experience that right now. And I'd ask all of us to then notice how that single experience of non-separation, the direct experience, to whatever extent we are able to experience it right now, doesn't have to be profound, although for some people it may be. It doesn't have to be. It isn't about quantity. It's just about the quality of this experience. We're breathing and we just notice that the air is coming in and out. It's not my breath. The world is breathing into me as I breathe in. I'm breathing into the world as I breathe out. There's this one single breath. Notice as you do that, three important qualities. The first is that most of us, as we enter this state of mind, may notice some degree of resistance, some degree of resistance to having this experience, some amount of perhaps fear. Well, what if I were to completely let go into this oneness? What would happen to me? Could I still live my life? Maybe I should hold on to separation a little bit. So notice that. Notice also a very different experience, the deep love, the bliss, the joy of experiencing the vast love for all beings that comes when we enter this state of non-separation. And then finally, notice the grief that we have participated in the killing of life by living the way we do in the modern world. These three, the resistance to completely letting go into this experience of oneness, the draw into the experience because of the love and bliss that comes with it, and then also this grief. Perhaps you could even say shame. This regret, this deep concern that comes with an awareness that we have, and who knows, we may even continue to participate in the destruction of life. And I'd ask us, as we explore this point, to attempt to continue to investigate these three qualities, to continue to stay in the state of non-separation as much as we can, and to notice how we resist non-separation. We actually cling to separation, but we don't really like it. It's awful. We want to be loving and happy. It draws us out of ourselves. But once we get drawn out, something comes with that, a kind of regret, a concern regarding harm that may be done. It's of the utmost importance that we stay right in this, because if we don't notice all of these components, then when we start talking about the destruction of life, it can become overwhelming and debilitating. So we have to be very mature about this. In a place like this, we look into this very closely. When we have this degree of love and bliss, it makes us capable of experiencing regret, concern, without it becoming a harmful experience. Because of that, we can step by step work through the resistance to non-separation, or if you wish to say it the opposite way, the clinging to separation. So within that, I'd say, yes, I'm very concerned that we might continue to destroy life. I love life, all beings. And for that reason, I'm concerned. That concern is expressed as an increasing attempt to live my life in a way that is of greatest service to all life. I'm deeply concerned that the religious traditions that are designing this next era aren't familiar with this experience deeply enough to create in accordance with it. People may have had glimpses of it, but one of the problems that has come with Buddhism coming to the West, one of the ways that we have failed, I'd suggest, is that Buddhism has been turned into a product, something to be consumed. The experience of non-separation, for example. People want to come to a retreat, they pay whatever they have to pay for the retreat. And if it's a week, then maybe on day 6, they'd like the experience of non-separation. They'd like to take that experience with them as something that they experienced. They now know that, and they can incorporate it into their sense of self. It becomes a kind of a decoration. That is not what this is about. This is about actually changing how we live in order to care for all beings.
Mm. Do you have any examples of particularly the Silicon Valley types undergoing notable transformations through working with you?
Oh, yes, of course. And they generally have all three of these qualities that I just mentioned. There's an awareness that if they go in deeply, then they will need to regret. And so there's a resistance to that. At the same time, there's a great draw into this awareness and into this happiness, this supreme purpose, in fact, of love for all beings. So what does that mean? Well, I'll give you two examples. I was working with a significant AI firm in San Francisco, and in their office, in their main office, we were exploring these topics. And as we explored it, it became clear that there would need to be a deep reckoning with their way of looking at the world. That the way they were looking at the world was out of accord with this experience of non-separation that all of us just now explored. And it quickly became clear that they were not willing to do that. They just weren't. That was not going to happen. At that point, of course, the same thing happens as usually happens. The conversation became highly intellectual. That's a good way to avoid these kinds of inner conflicts. And in asserting certain philosophical views, there became we found an impasse. And so it became impossible to continue. And I decided that it wouldn't be possible to continue that work. I think it was mutual, but they were very surprised that I wasn't willing to compromise. But it's important that we not compromise, because we must not contribute to planetary harm. On the other side, there's a woman who's, again, very much involved in this, who has been doing retreats here for a long time. And she is very much involved in a number of these enterprises. And she, like many people, it's very understandable. We come from a consumer world. And she would come and have a wonderful experience and then go back and work, come back here for a little while, have another amazing experience, shocking, shattering experience, go back. And all of these experiences are very good, of course. It's exciting. But to me, what just happened the last time she was here was far more exciting, which was simply that she realized in the middle of another one of these meditation retreats, she realized, oh, I haven't been really doing this at all. The whole time I've been doing it, I've been keeping a wall up to prevent this from actually changing my life. I'm coming to get clarity, but it's always on a condition. The condition is, don't actually change my life, please. I'm not really up for that. To see how deep our attachment to our lives, the way we have lived, truly is, this is much more interesting to me than someone coming and having a fantastic, blissful experience. And don't misunderstand, having a fantastic, blissful experience is great. I fully support that. That's a very good thing. It's just relinquishing the clinging to acquiring a blissful experience is more valuable than the blissful experience. And to see someone do that, that changes the way that such a person is involved in these various activities, in these various enterprises.
Mm. But one place I wonder what you might be able to offer people in Silicon Valley, there's enormous pressure to dive into the cycles of boom and bust. Like we're both old enough to remember the dot-com bubble, which got completely ridiculous. And the companies that gave into those worst impulses broke apart, like they were destroyed by the process. The ones that managed to keep a greater sense of identity and purpose were more likely to endure and come out the other side. And ultimately be proven the winners of history. And I wonder if there's a like you basically need to give the accelerationists tools that allow them to succeed in the environment that's that's driving them towards these negative outcomes.
That is true. Uh, Most important of all, how to encourage deep integrity,
Mm,
how to do it. And this, of course, is a challenge. But I'd suggest once again that having a community of integrity is most important.
mm,
To have a group of people who live in integrity. That community can work with a company, which is actually just another community.
mm.
Difficult for me as an individual to help as much as a community can. So when we go there, we actually set up a little monastery in the middle of Silicon Valley, in the middle of San Francisco. We rent a house and we make a little monastery. And in the past, I would go into their offices, but it's much more effective to invite them into our culture. In that way, it's you can do more in 3 seconds than you can do in 3 hours.
Yeah.
And I mean that honestly. You
Mm,
can actually do more in 3 seconds than you can do in 3 hours if they come into that environment, this community of integrity. And why? Let me, if I could,
mm,
clarify this point.
mm,
Is that okay? Or do you have a
yes.
different question?
No. Clarify.
So this is a point that that deeply matters. One of the most challenging points in Silicon Valley is the same as the challenging point everywhere in the world at this point, as far as I can tell, which is that people have a harder and harder time believing that they matter. For that reason, they don't have agency.
Mm,
Now, Silicon Valley, more than anyone, is actually trying to convince people that they don't have agency. They want to somehow shift agency from people to machines. It's one of the main goals of in Silicon Valley right now. It's one of the main reasons that intimacy between humans and machines is taken to be so essential. That's the race right now, trying to create intimacy, because we're trying to find some way, we are trying to find some way to move agency into some kind of machine. And so the strange thing is that they're convincing themselves even that they don't have agency, that they don't matter. A community of authenticity understands that you do matter. And in Buddhism, the basic distinction between the worst religions and other religions that aren't just the worst religions, so the worst religions of all, claim a deterministic nihilism.
mm,
And more Silicon Valley is falling into this deterministic nihilism. Deterministic nihilism is the supreme claim that you can't do anything. You don't have free will. There's nothing you can do about it. You don't matter. You're just a bunch of algorithms, and we can manipulate those algorithms, and therefore we should.
mm.
Because of that philosophy, people have the experience that what they do is irrelevant, that the circumstances that we're in were inevitable. There's nothing I can do about it. How do you get people out of that? A community of integrity will get people out of that.
Mm.
And how? By continually proving to people that what they do does matter.
Mm.
And what that means specifically is that people must have the ability, in a way that has clear consequences, to succeed and to fail.
Mm.
People are so afraid of failure that they don't succeed. They don't
Mm.
try anything.
Mm.
And in a community of integrity, we love each other, we care for each other. I, as the teacher, have the job to continually demand that people step up. And it's a good teacher will always set up a student for success, will never set up a student for failure,
Mm.
but will also always allow the student to fail if they choose.
Mm.
The teacher's job is to have exactly the highest aspiration for the student that the student has for themselves. That is the teacher's job. But that means if it's really at that limit, it means that the student could fail.
Mm.
And that failure can be so painful that it feels harmful. But you must have the ability to fail, because without that, you don't have the ability to succeed. And if you don't have the ability to fail and succeed, then you cannot demonstrate that what you do matters. But what you do does matter. And so when we bring people into this community, the thing that they see is, oh, what I do makes a difference. I can help people, I can harm people. Of course, some people end up harming so much that we have to tell them to leave. And that hurts them, of course. They have to go back and be lonely again and not be encouraged to believe that they matter. And so it's very painful, of course. They may lash out, But in the same way that a parent eventually has to tell the child, the teenager, whatever age, you have to do this on your own now.
Mm.
Even if the child then lashes, of course, they're going to go to the person who's safest, The teen may then immediately get mad at the parent, because that's the safe person to get mad at. It's a safe person to fail with.
Mm.
Okay, fine. Well, we just accept that. That's okay. That's how it goes. The teen will get mad at the parent, and then next thing you know, they go to the parent for reassurance that it was okay that they hurt the parent. It's the same thing with the teacher and students.
Mm.
All of that has to be fine, though. You have to accept all of that.
Mm.
Because the most important thing is to show people you matter. Your choices make a difference. That is the great offering that we give to people. And soon enough, it becomes a larger scale thing. People can see, oh, it's not inevitable. We made the world this way. We can make it different. And since I can make a difference, can in fact make a different world. So I will use my capital, my influence, in order to serve all beings.
You've reminded me of an earlier question I skipped over until now. I wonder if the decentralized, networked structure of the monasteries gives us a hint about what the internet could be. And I would maybe contrast the structure of like a network of monasteries where each has their own leader and their own variations and perspective, but they're all talking to each other and sharing ideas that work, versus something like a Vatican, where it's one centralized big authority that becomes very plodding and authoritative and sometimes quite demanding in what it imposes on other people. And I wonder if there's analogies here between the biggest companies in the digital sphere, which are becoming very centralized and very monolithic, versus the potential that's still there in the internet and may even still be there in AI technology that's starting to emerge, that it can be distributed into the hands of smaller communities that have a bit more freedom to fail and succeed, and then share their findings, share their perspectives with others.
Absolutely. Again, if we look at Buddhist history, the thing Buddhism was best at was making use of this phenomenon that we call the Silk Road. Of course, it wasn't really a Silk Road, but people know what I mean by that, this trade network. Buddhism saw this trade network and realized, oh, this is exactly how we not only spread the message of Buddhism, but how we all stay in touch with each other. So that many different forms of Buddhism emerged. I'd suggest that there's more diversity of doctrine in Buddhism than in all Abrahamic traditions put together. It's hard to find anything that all Buddhists agree on, actually. There are Buddhists who don't even take Gautama Buddha to be the main Buddha. There are Buddhists who take their primary Buddha to be a different person. So it's hard to find anything that is held, any view that's held by all Buddhists. And Buddhism has a long history of disagreeing. Uh, what's unusual, I'd suggest, though, is that in Buddhist history, it doesn't turn into a war,
Yeah, yeah. It didn't harden into factions.
doesn't harden into factions. And most impressive, if you want to know the doctrine of a certain school, if you're a beginner and you just want to get a sense of it, your best bet is almost never to read their writings. You almost always want to read the writings of their opponents, because their opponents describe their teachings not only fairly, they're fair. They say they accurately represent their opponent's teaching, but they even describe them in a beautiful and aggressive way so that you can honestly understand what is meant. You get a real introduction by their opponents.
Mm.
To the point where at the times when you see two groups fighting and one of them starts to win in Buddhist history, you see repeatedly that the winners actually send some of their best monks to the other side to revitalize, to recreate this beautiful international conversation.
Mm.
So there has been a long history of this capacity. And yes, I would suggest that we can do that with the internet.
Mm.
The most important aspect, however, is to look right now, right in the way the internet is set up at this moment. It is not set up in order to produce helpful collegial dialogue. That is the systems at play reward rage
Mm.
and aggression. It's very sad.
Mm.
And so we need to look at that first and foremost. How are we going to create a connection? And once again, I'd suggest that the most important thing is that we clarify our mind. So in the same way that we did earlier, when you engage with the internet, be sure that your mind, take care of your mind.
Mm.
Are you in a mind of compassion? Are you remembering that we are not separate? Is it possible to deeply experience that non-separation while engaging with this medium?
Mm.
This is of the utmost importance.
Do you think it might be possible for people to live something like a monastic life in isolation while connected through digital interactions? Like, is there a necessity for people to be in the same building to create these kind of communities? Or, I don't know if we're quite there yet, proven with the technology, but it feels like it might soon be something that's possible.
Well, people are, of course, trying this. A lot of people are. And I would say that there are certain things that require people to be physically together.
Mm.
There are certain things that don't. We're all connected. We're all connected whether we're physically together or not. But as I say, loneliness is a huge problem in the world. And to live together means that someone will physically be there for you if you need it.
Mm.
And we have people here with lots of health concerns. They often need someone to physically help them. And we do that here.
Mm.
We give you a place to live that will work for you. We tell you to rest. You say, no, I want to do this. And we say, well, you can't do it. You need to rest right now. It's difficult to do that remotely. But in any case, we're all connected. That's just how it is.
Yeah.
There isn't real isolation.
Mm.
There isn't really a way to be isolated. If you're connecting through devices, you're still directly dependent upon this physical world.
Mm,
And so I'd suggest that while it may be possible, I don't know why that would be good.
mm,
Um, I don't know why it would be advisable. It seems to me that these shut-ins, these people caught in their parents' basement playing video games, are serving a certain religious view by doing that.
mm,
I don't have the sense that it is a good religious view.
mm,
I don't
mm.
have the sense that it's a healthy religious view.
I'm reminded of the anchorites in Christian tradition that would be sealed off in a little chamber to just pray in complete
Exactly.
isolation until they died, and it feels like there's parallels with the hikikomori in Japan, who their entire lifeline to the world is through maybe like a video game or an anime series. That's their one remaining connection. It yeah, it doesn't necessarily feel like the healthiest kind of approach. No. Oh,
Well, yeah, that's the thing is, again, what religion are you serving in your isolation?
mm, mm,
This is the question. Uh, Even when people are sealed off, there is still a sense of deep connection with the divine.
mm,
And there's an understanding that by being sealed off in that way, you are in fact changing the mundane world and serving all beings. So, is there that same sense? And in my experience working with people in this situation, I haven't worked with, even though I lived in Japan for many years, I didn't work with anyone in the situation there. I was in the monastery the whole time.
mm,
But I have worked with people in that situation here. And I should say, one of the people who joined the monastery was one of these people. Uh, he had been stuck in his parents' house for about 10 years. He couldn't leave. And the place where he could come to be safe was actually this monastery. So he was ordained there. He was from a nearby city. He was about an hour and a half away. And after living with us for about 4 years, he decided to go and he joined a different form of Buddhism and became a layperson.
mm,
So I'm familiar with it. And I can say that in all these cases, it doesn't look to me the same at all as, for example, my times in isolation. I've been in isolation for many months at a time, on many occasions. But those times I end up feeling more and more connected to all beings.
mm,
Uh, when I came out, I was all the more able to actually see people and love people, connect with people, offer myself,
mm.
because you more and more see that there isn't isolation. So I would say that a big difference there is that these shut-ins are caught in representation, caught in conceptualization. Does that make sense?
Yeah,
The
yeah.
video game, the anime series, this is representation. But when you enter a deep spiritual state, you become free of representation. You directly encounter this beautiful world.
Mm.
And in directly encountering this beautiful world, you're able to more and more connect.
Well,
This is an essential difference
yeah.
between representation and worshiping representation as reality versus letting go of representation and therefore allowing yourself to escape from your mind into reality.
It reminds me of like, do you think video games are almost like an anti-meditation that many people spend many hours of the week in this kind of hypnotic state, but they're trapped in an abstraction. It's as disconnected from reality as you can get.
Yeah, perhaps I know people who are trying to make video games in a better way.
Mm,
That may be possible. I don't say it's not. Once again, it's of the utmost importance that we do it from a mind of deep connection, of non-separation, non-conceptual compassion for all beings, which I hope that you, I, all of us listening right now are continually remaining in as we move through this process. Are we
mm.
truly experiencing it, not just an idea of it, not just remembering, but actually cultivating it through this conversation? Uh, Could you make a video game from that mind that was helpful? I don't see why not.
Mm,
But the fact of the matter is, video games as I see them are not serving that purpose.
mm.
And yes, they are trapping one's mind in representation, confusing us, and for that reason, disconnecting us.
Mm. Now, you gave your perspective on accelerationism as a philosophy in Silicon Valley. What about effective altruism?
Yeah, so once again, I think we may have to review this point again and again, because this is the deep confusion of our age. Uh, I know a lot of effective altruists, and their issue is simply that they're so caught in thinking. They try to model the world and then make decisions according to that model
Mm,
without fully accepting the fact that their model is inaccurate, and it is deeply inaccurate. These models that we create aren't, this is again the question, is a model of reality a good way to know reality?
mm,
And I would suggest it's not. A model is a good way to manipulate reality, but it is not a good way to know reality. There is a way to know reality, namely, completely let go of all models.
mm. It's right there in front of you.
Exactly. And so the EA folks aren't good at that. And for that reason, they do exactly what they think they should do and do harm in the process. So I have talked with them a great deal, and it's very hard for them to get out of their ideas of things. It's good when they come here and spend a lot of time here, and then they can see something beyond their minds and can then subject their models to that. That is the correct directionality.
Mm, mm. What about transhumanism? That's another kind of thread of
Mhm.
worldview that's emerging, particularly in Silicon Valley. Uh,
Absolutely.
that's kind of like self-directed transformation through technology. How does that compare with like older traditions of self-transformation through spiritual practices?
Well, I'd say that all of these traditions do some kind of self-transformation through technology.
Mm,
It's just, what is your technology based on?
mm,
What is the worldview on which your technology is based? So transhumanists tend to be materialistic. And when they say technology, they mean a material technology. Uh, Other traditions don't see the world in a materialistic way. In fact, see materialism as an unusually immature view, uh, disconnected from reality, for which there is no evidence. Materialism is often presented as this down-to-earth view, but it's not down to earth at all.
mm,
It's completely imaginary. There's no evidence for it in the slightest. No one has ever encountered matter. No one can say what matter is supposed to be. We experience appearance, the appearance of a material world. But our direct experience, and again, Buddhism is absolutely uncompromising in the demand for evidence.
mm,
Uh, so, is there any evidence for a material world? No. No one's ever found one. We have this experience, this perception. That, yes, you can say perception, but then you have to ask, so what's perception?
mm,
Does it have some kind of inherent existence? And then we discover, no, it also doesn't have inherent existence. It comes and goes according to conditions. So transhumanists tend to deeply identify with matter and with their story of themselves, meaning their preferences.
mm,
So these two are just outgrowths. It's just the next step of secular humanism.
mm,
Yes, so secular is materialistic. Humanism means I have an idea of myself. Promoting that idea is success.
mhm, mhm,
And the issue that I would suggest is that because transhumanists are trying to, quote, improve themselves based on their preferences, their desires, their attachments, and their ideas, that it won't end well. It's just not an effective way. Not because there's something wrong with technology or something wrong with people wanting to move forward in life. Those are good things. But because the premises are wrong. Because these two views aren't correct, it doesn't end up well. On the contrary, it ends up very badly.
Zooming out even from that, is the Western concept of individualism an illusion? And do we cling to it ever more tightly? At the same time, we're becoming so dependent on these abstract systems, like, to meet our basic needs. Like we have to tell this story of ourselves as individuals to kind of avoid facing that reality that we're so dependent on these systems.
Yeah, I think it's very uh, perspicacious of you to point this out. It's very helpful to point out that individualism as a worldview, as a way to live one's life, was developed in parallel with the most sophisticated brainwashing technologies in all of human history, which is to say that it's just an excellent divide and conquer method, or divide and rule method. You tell everyone that they're separate. Once you have access to their emotions, their desires, their thoughts, and you can get everyone to see things in just the right ways so that they participate in a consumerist, a producerist lifestyle. It seems as if everybody's going to their own home, but haven't you noticed that all the homes look the same? Haven't you noticed that everyone's watching the same TV shows? You can say that you're alone watching a TV show, but you're not. You're watching a TV show with millions of other people. And that's church for secular humanism. For an individualistic humanism, you would need to have a church experience when you're alone. So you go to this evangelical broadcasting system that tells you how to look at things, and you seem to be alone because it's unusually easy to brainwash you when you feel lonely and you're looking for connection with, oh, I guess I have a screen. That's where I'll get my connection. That intimacy allows the brainwashing. But yeah, I think that the individualism is a intentional illusion.
I love that response. Now, we're getting towards the end of this, so I hope I haven't kept you going too long. I have a tangential, bold theory that humanity has an opportunity to domesticate elephants by hybridizing different lineages, basically repeating what we did with cattle, to save them from probable extinction in coming centuries. Like their trajectory is down, down, down. And I wonder about the ethics of this kind of idea. And did humanity save or curse animals like cattle by bringing them into the fold and making them part of our community?
Yeah, let's talk about cattle first. Um, Again, let's remain in touch with this sacred love for all beings, whatever that might mean. We're going to be open to whatever our experience is as we go beyond separation. We have been not separate from livestock, from cattle, for a long time now. And that has meant certain deep connections and loving connections in some cases. But it's also meant what we see now is what may be the most extreme and extensive suffering that has ever existed on this planet. Industrial farming has produced torture for billions of beings, not just cattle, chickens, many others. These are intelligent, social, caring creatures who are tortured in a way that most people can't imagine, not because it's impossible to imagine, but because it's too emotionally straining to imagine. This is something that I've worried about since I was a child, and it's very painful to consider what's happening as we speak right now.
Mm.
There is something else that's happened, though, which is perhaps worse than that, if anything could be. And that is that those domesticated animals have replaced wild animals. And many species have gone extinct so that a very few species who are suffering terribly can multiply.
Mm.
So overall, if we look at the reality, I would suggest it's been a terrible net negative, just terrible.
Mm.
One of the worst things that's ever happened on the planet. And again, we just have to face it. I know it's hard. I know it's overwhelming to hear these words. And so we have to remain with access to the bliss of love. Because if we don't have that, if we're not fed by that love, then facing the regret will end up causing us to just resist non-separation. We will cling to separation. But we are not separate from these beings. Why does this happen? Well, it happens again because of the mind that has done it. The mind that has participated in this has found ways of deluding ourselves into believing that we are separate from these living beings. We've come up with philosophical justifications that say that cows don't feel. Domesticated animals are just machines without experiences. Everybody knows that's not true.
Mm.
It's obvious it's not true. We've known that that isn't true for millions of years.
Is that another
So,
sin of humanism that it put a special spark just in humans and deprived the rest of the world from it?
oh, I think that started much earlier.
Hmm.
I think that most forms of theism were already doing that.
Hmm.
And then humanism just took it to its next level.
Mm.
At this point, accelerationism is taking that to its next level and saying that it's just intelligence itself that has the sacred spark.
Hmm.
It's not humans either. But again, we can perhaps
Mm.
cover that at a different moment. Let's
Mm.
finish with this.
Yes, sorry.
So, what mind is it that would uh, take this action with elephants? Is it truly a loving mind? And is the mind that will end up in charge of this experiment loving?
Mm.
This we have to be very careful with. So once again, the question is, are we actually in the experience of non-separation? Are we actually in it? So that we ourselves know that it's ourselves that this is happening to.
Mm.
Is that really where we are? Or are we just thinking about it? That's why we need a spiritual practice. Because for human beings, we again and again attach to our representation of reality and come to believe that that is reality. That is the illness that has caused us to cause such harm to life on earth. So most important is that we set aside these representations, representations of ourselves, meaning our own stories, representation of the world, meaning our worldview. All of that we have to be able to let go of and directly encounter non-separation, pure love, which means a willingness to experience all of the suffering of the world. That is the essential component that will answer your question.
Mm. Mm. Well, I hope that I'm bringing that question to the world in that mindset that the idea of industrially farming elephants is horrific beyond belief, but the possibility of losing them on this planet is a tragedy. It's an immeasurable tragedy. They're the last large megafauna that we haven't already driven to extinction, and there has to be a way of renegotiating that relationship in a way that's mutually respectful and beneficial.
Exactly.
Mm.
So let me, since it's my profession, let me point something out.
Mm.
Uh, the mind that's able to do that has let go of three attachments. There are three things that cause us to do terrible harm, even while we're trying to do good. One is that we have to let go of the attachment to sensual pleasure. So everything we've done with cattle is based on sensual pleasure. We're willing to cause beings to suffer terribly for many years so that we can experience fleeting sensual pleasure of eating something when we're often not even paying attention. We're lost in a video while we're eating meat. I'm not saying that being here we're vegan, but I'm not ascribing more to that than is reasonable. You understand?
Mm-hmm.
I'm talking about something else.
Mm.
The question is, are we making these decisions based on sensual desires? That's the first. The second, we must let go of our attachment to existing. So a species, you as a person or us as a group, that has let go of our own attachment to existing is willing to die. Well, then you're in a much better position to help others to exist.
Mm-hmm.
This is crucial. Humans aren't good at letting go of our desire to exist. Philosophically, it sounds quite interesting, but when it comes down to it, when you're in a meditation retreat and your story of yourself starts to dissolve, that's a moment when you can either have courage and let go of it, or you can cling to it all the more and see whatever it was that was dismantling that story to be evil. Things can get visceral very fast. So when we're actually needing to face, well, wait a second. Should we cling to existence? Should humans hold on to existence? Philosophically, it's one thing. But once again, if we're in this deep mind of love, regret, non-separation, from there, can we let go of the need to exist? And finally, the third, so the first is attachment to sensual pleasures. Next, attachment to existence. Finally, attachment to non-existence. You may have noticed that people now are all the more interested in non-existing. When I was a kid, I was worried about existential risks, and I would talk to people. And when I would bring up these huge problems, I could always see the fear in their eye that we might destroy ourselves, destroy life on Earth. Nowadays, when I talk to people, especially two groups, accelerationists on the one hand, and young people on the other, say, if we keep going this way, we're going to destroy life on Earth. The main thing I see is relief.
Mm.
There's a sense of, okay, good. This is just so bad. There's no escape from suffering. There's no such thing as true happiness. I just want this to end.
Mm.
If we have an attachment to non-existence, then once again, we can't actually serve elephants or anyone.
Mm. Mm.
So have we gone through the process of actually letting go of our attachment to sensual pleasures, attachment to existence, and attachment to doing whatever it takes to destroy ourselves? If so, then we're in that position to take these kinds of actions, and we need people to have that spiritual maturity, to be willing to do whatever it takes in order to be of service in these times when we have to answer questions like this.
Mm. Mm. Okay, alrighty. I appreciate that very in-depth and reflective answer, because it's been a question that's been bothering me, that it's one thing to have an idea and an intellectual theory about these things, but there's so much more to it, and you were the perfect person to ask that question to. Okay, so I have two standard questions that I ask everyone, and often I'm talking to like plant breeders, and they're like they have particular projects, they have fantasy things in mind that they would love to bring into the world. But if you had the power to create a new life form, what principles or goals would you use in going about that?
Yeah, you sent this to me, and I looked over and contemplated it carefully. Buddhism has a real skepticism regarding creating a new life form.
Mm,
Uh, for me in my life, as I've said repeatedly in this conversation, what matters is to enter a direct awareness of this one life that isn't created or destroyed. That's what matters. So, how can I answer this question? I considered this
mm,
hour after hour. How am I going to answer this question? And I considered, well, there is one life that it's my responsibility to create. And so I'd say that if I could create just one life form, it would be a fully enlightened me,
mm, mm.
fully enlightened Soryu Forall. That is the life form that I would want to bring into the world.
I love that answer. I love that answer. That's why I love this is a I love all the diversity of responses I get to this because there's so many different perspectives. And yeah, that
Yeah.
one, it's surprising but inevitable and very satisfying. So the other one, which maybe is has more room for nitty-gritty practicality, given you're already doing this, if you could create some form of new culture, be it a tradition or an institution to give to the world. And I mean, you're a rare example that is already doing this. You've spent your life reaching this point of building the Monastery Academy. But what if you had a whole other life to do something? Is there, or this is like an opportunity for someone to say, wait a sec, I could do that with my life if they're listening.
Yeah. Again, I've considered this. Like I say, you sent me these two questions, and uh, other than creating an institution, uh, an ideology that cares for this world at this moment of crisis, by caring for the people in that community, it's very hard for me to find another answer. Uh, Very difficult. As I say, I contemplated it, but an institution that frees us from ourselves so that we can care for all beings, and by caring for all beings, to realize enlightenment, that's pretty good.
Mm.
Uh, I've tried so many things in my life. I didn't think that I would end up where I am. I've tried many things. I worked in schools and I tried to make an institution to help the educational system improve. I've done workshops. I've traveled the world giving retreats. I've worked in various companies. Uh, I've tried many, many things. And in the end, this is the one that uh, both seems most likely to be of greatest service to the world, and is also the one that fits my propensities, my lifelong uh, attempts at cultivation.
Mm.
So yeah, it's very hard. Do you have a suggestion? What do you
Well,
think
you've
I
read my
might do?
mind. You're a rare example where I would make a suggestion, though I love that answer, and I think it's a sign you've found your true purpose in life. But my suggestion would be to look at Saint Benedict. So monasteries had been around probably in the East long before he came along, but he created that book that was kind of like a blueprint that allowed the institution to propagate successfully
Oh
through
yeah.
Europe in a really short. So maybe there's some new technology today that would allow people to create similar institutions with a higher chance of success. Because at the moment, I think you need a very special set of skills to bring something like this into fruition. Maybe it doesn't need to be quite so difficult. If you, as long as you had sincerely interested people, you could give
Yep.
them an opportunity to replicate your success.
Yeah, so I would say on that, two things. One, in the Zen tradition, that person was Hyakujo Zenji.
Hmm.
He's the one who did the same thing in China. And in Buddhism, So in India, it was the Buddha. He made the Vinaya, he created the structure of the institution so that it could spread. In China, that happened in many different ways over centuries, but in Zen, you'd have to say that Hyakujo Zenji is the greatest figure on this in this field. It is essential that we do that here. And one of the things that we've actually worked on is what we call monastery in a box. This is one of the projects we've done.
Mm.
And that means that we explain this is how you do it.
Mm.
And we can actually tell you very clearly this is how you do it. There are 3 particular things that you need to work on. And if you put them together in the right way, you have a high likelihood of success. However, I will say that in the end, none of that really matters. Partially because you can figure it out. You'll find your way. Obviously, we love to help people. And as I say, there are 3 things you need to work on. And if you work on them in a certain way, you can get there. And there are ways that most people resist doing those things. And we can help you through it because we've been through it. But in the end, people are in a community like this because there's of any community, not particularly this one. It's the same everywhere. There needs to be someone who loves the people coming in, the spiritual goal, and all beings.
Mm.
The question is there someone who has actually gotten to that point? And that means that they have to be willing to go through all kinds of stuff in order to live that love. But people come and stay to be truly seen and truly loved. To try to put that into a manual may be counterproductive. Mm-hmm. What's needed instead is that a person works through their own stuff, their own issues, to the point that they love themselves, that they see, I am a complete mess, and it's possible to work through every aspect of this mess. And for that reason, I can see each person who is a complete mess with absolute acceptance and care. Mm. That is what's really needed. And so, yes, of course, we've worked on Monastery in a Box, and we're doing a lot of different things. There are new technologies that you can use in order to track whether a community is actually making progress in these various ways. That's all important. So I appreciate your suggestion, because I can now tell everyone here that we should emphasize that even more, since you suggested it. But what matters is that regardless of what happens, whether people, for me, thousands of people have come through here. And that means I get to have this loving, caring relationship with thousands of people. About 99% of them just have wonderful experiences. And then there are a few people, very few, who get mad. But even that is actually a kind of relationship. There isn't a separation even there. All of that is what's needed. All of that is what the world, the earth, all of us need.
Well, a final little bonus question. I've wondered if something like a digital equivalent of the Amish is about to happen, that groups of people will come together and say, we will use technology, but only within these limits, but for our mutual collective benefit. Do you think that is something that's likely to happen in the near future?
Well, I think it's already happening. That's what we're doing here. So we are very involved in technology, but at the same time, we continually choose, do I want to use this or that? And the community sets up systems. So 1 week a month, nobody can be on screens at all. And from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., no one can be on screens at all. So we made that decision. I think it's very important that lots of communities make these kinds of decisions. And at the same time, we see certain people striving with absolutely ferocious fury to prevent anyone from succeeding at that.
Mm.
That seems to be one of the main goals of this moment, to make sure that all interactions go through this information processing system, to the point that deep personal friendships are seen as the enemy, because that kind of intimacy is competition to these systems. But the important thing that I would say there is that the reason that such groups are needed is that in the same way that each of us can think better if we meditate every day and do not think at all for a certain period of time, in just the same way that we can think more clearly by sometimes not thinking at all, these systems, they in fact are trying to get a grasp on reality. And they will do so best if there are people, there are groups who don't engage in those systems at all. Because once again, the people are not separate from the system. So to have clarity is essential for these systems to fulfill their own highest purpose. And so I would say that in the end, it is, I don't know if we'll succeed because we might kill everyone first, but it's of the utmost importance that there are communities of practice that do this.
Yes. Yep. Well, as a final point, I wonder if that is what you could offer Silicon Valley as the survival advantage. If the broader consciousness is starting to get sick of the internet in its runaway form, parties that offer an alternative, a healthier alternative, might actually be the only ones left standing at the end of that cultural reaction.
I hope we can offer that.
Mm,
Uh,
mm,
in order to be clear on that, we've actually decided to locate ourselves here rather than in Silicon Valley.
mm.
We have a branch in Silicon Valley, and I spend a few months a year there. But we've decided it's important to have a place, as you put it, in the wilds of Vermont, in order to establish the alternative that you're describing.
Mm, mm. Wonderful. This has been such a fascinating conversation. I've kept you going very long. Where can people learn more about the Monastery Academy and your work?
Well, it's actually interesting. Right now, at this moment, we have the opportunity to come to join for 3 months,
Hmm.
starting this summer. And I would welcome people to be in touch with us and to look into that. So yeah, monasticacademy.org, and there's a way of explaining what we do there that I hope is welcoming to some of your listeners.
Hmm. Hmm.
I would say, though, that the most important thing, the most important way to connect with us is what I've reiterated a few times, which is directly experience non-separation in whatever way you do. Everybody's going to be different. Some people go for a walk, some people meditate. For other people, it's some other way. But that connects us directly. To actually enter that and touch upon this love and also this deep concern, to know the draw into it and also the resistance to it, to know that directly and work through that, that allows us to get out of representation. People can just come and visit, we're in Vermont, just visit. You can show up for lunch. Please show up for lunch. It's at noon every day.
Mm.
Just show up. It'll be great. Just show up, see what it's like. You'll learn more in 3 seconds of the direct experience than in years of internet representation of it.
Mm.
But the first thing is let go of our view of our ways of looking at things and enter into direct communion with life.
Mm.
This, I'd suggest, is the way that we can connect here and now.
Excellent. I know if I'd been aware of these alternatives when I was choosing to go into what's left of the universities early in my life, I think I would have done much better to dip into the opportunities that are offered by institutions such as yours. It's but it's just really fascinating seeing it appearing in the world at this time in history. I think it's sorely needed.
It's amazing, isn't it?
Mm,
It's really, really exciting.
mm, mm. Well, with that, Soryu, thank you very much for a fantastic conversation.
Yeah, and thank you. And I know that you just did a different interview, and I appreciate that you spent so many hours. It's impressive that you have such energy and such dedication. So thank you for your expression of this love for all beings.
If you'd like to support the show, sign up to my Substack, leave a rating or a review, or a comment on YouTube. Next week, I'll be talking to Zach Alfers, a tree crop and wild crop breeder extraordinaire.